Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Quality Talks podcast. Unfortunately, Chris can't be with us. He's not very well at the moment, so you're stuck with me, I'm afraid. And there's been a last minute kind of change to the original schedule for this recording, but we'll get back on track when Chris is better over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, so it's me. But what I thought I'd do in this episode, we'll keep it short. Um, but I wanted to kind of share with you some of the thinking I've been having recently through conversations around leadership, and specifically those that are new into leadership roles and more so within the quality space. I've had a lot of conversations with people around this recently. And some of those people I work with, some of those outside of the company that I'm in. And it just got me thinking around, the transition from being in a team to then moving into a leadership role, and that might be leading that same team. It might be a bigger role. It might be leading multiple teams. You may even be going into a new organization in a new role as a new leader. Maybe you've never done leadership role before, so it's a whole new kind of experience for you. So I thought I'd just share some tips from my side, from experience over the years. I mean, I've been in the industry for 28 years now. Well, it'll be 28 years in September, and around 18 of those have been in different positions of leadership. Different levels, different structures. Predominantly, those roles have always had some sort of line management, so direct people connection. So thinking about people development and that kind of thing. But not every leadership role has that responsibility. There are a lot more roles that are springing up nowadays, which are individual contributor roles, staff engineer roles, which are all positions of leadership. And whilst the roles may vary, the responsibilities may vary, the tips I'm going to share with you today are going to be more relatable to all types of leadership. So you can kind of take these tips and apply them hopefully into any different situation you may be in. And even if you're an experienced leader, right, these tips still hold true. Even from me, all these years of leadership, I still look at these and challenge myself, reflect a lot and think about, am I really living up to these things? And whilst I was sort of thinking about what I could talk about for this episode, I've been doing just that. So this is a bit of a refresher for me, I think, as well. So let's get into it then. So let's think about, you're new into a leadership role. What are 5 things that potentially could help you? Well, the first tip that I've got is, when you're moving from, say, in a team to being a leader of that team, or it might be more than one team, like I said before, or even broader, you've got to shift your mindset. So you may have been promoted. You may have applied for a different type of role within your same organization and been successful in that role, or you may have applied for a role in another organization and been successful. The thing you've got to remember is that the same sort of things that maybe did you well in your previous role. So if you were promoted, how you worked and the things you did may not still be the ways in which you need to work when moving into a leadership role. And that mindset has to shift. So if you think about maybe, the opportunities that were created for you when you were working towards a promotion, or the development opportunities that you've been through that maybe have given you then the opportunity to get a role elsewhere that is of a higher level and of a leadership level. Those are the things that you need to be thinking as a leader. How do you create those opportunities for other people? So you don't want to be doing those things anymore. You want to sort of take a step back a little bit and think about, right, how can I enable people in different ways? How can I create opportunities for people in different ways? And that could just be through, having one-to-ones with them, understanding where they are at their own development level, at their own experience level, confidence, but also just understanding where they want to get to in their careers. So, taking that step back and understanding the people that you used to work with, potentially, they could have been in the same team with you. You could have worked with them on a day-to-day basis, but now your lens needs to shift, and it needs to support and enable them in a different way. If you're landing into a different team, then obviously, you need to sort of build those relationships anyway. But it still stands true. The things that you were doing before often are not going to be the same things you need to continue to do. And you need to think about how you need to land, how you need to change that mindset. And as I say, take a step back. Your vision will become broader depending on the level of role. You'll need to start thinking more strategy wise, those kind of things. So, you really need to shift from sort of that doing mentality, or, you're in the team, you're doing the tasks, you're doing the testing, you're building the frameworks, you're pairing with your developers, etc., to do the activities on a day-to-day basis. That sort of mindset needs to shift a little bit. It's not to say you won't still need to get hands-on. In some roles you will, especially if you're an individual contributor, but it needs to shift, and you need to be aware of that. And that can be hard. I've had a lot of conversations with people recently where they've been promoted into a new role, new leadership role, and they're still trying to do the same sort of things that they were doing before, which helped them get promoted. But obviously it's not going to then continue to build their experience and build their knowledge and the impact that they have, because that impact needs to change. So that would be my first tip. So just try and be very aware of that transition. It can be difficult, but be self-aware. Ask yourself, am I doing the right things? Reach out to your leader. Reach out to other people that are also maybe now at the same level as you. Have a chat with them, understand how they've transitioned into the role, understand what the expectations are of them, or what they believe the expectations are of the role. And just take some time to kind of, build a better understanding of what it is now required of you. So that would be my first tip. My second tip, I've kind of touched on it already, and that is taking the time to build relationships. Now, you may have really great relationships with the people that you were in a team with. So if you're then moving into a position where you're now leading that team, that's great. You've already got those relationships, and those relationships don't need to necessarily change. What you've got to remember about building relationships with people is a lot of things around relationships is about trust. And as a leader, you need your team to trust you, and you need to trust your team. And you do that through obviously building those relationships, getting a better understanding of people, having empathy for people, and just taking that time to really, connect and understand. But it's not just about in your team. You may have peers at the leadership level that maybe you've never worked with before. You need to take time to do the same thing there. You need to take time to understand. You need to take time to get to know them. You need to take time to empathize with them. They might be from different disciplines, so they might not all be within the quality space, for example. They might be within the developer space, or they might be in the product space, or wherever. So you need to make time to develop those relationships, because ultimately leadership in the quality space can be very lonely if you don't have those relationships. Often we are outnumbered in a number of cases. I mean, to be fair, I think product owners, product managers are outnumbered even more. But from the roles that we're trying to play and the impact and the influence we're trying to have, it can get very, very lonely, and you really do need those allies, and you need to take time to build those relationships, but be proactive with it. So when you land in your role, a great thing to do would be to spend time with somebody, or speak to your line manager or your leader and say, who are the people that I need to get to know? So if you're new into an organization, that's a great starting point, understanding who it is you find time to get to speak to, and start building relationships. If you're already within an organization that you've worked at before, then you may already know who they are, but maybe you don't have those connections yet. So take time to make those connections, and make sure you're doing it cross-functionally. Okay, because the thing you got to remember here in terms of being a leader is the influence level changes, and you're now trying to influence people, across the board from a leadership perspective, and you may not always be able to be in the room to advocate for quality, or anything like that. So you need to have those allyships. You need to be confident that others, maybe it's a engineering manager, will step up and they will wear the hat on your behalf should you not be around. I've had some great leaders that I've worked with in the past as my peers that would do exactly that. Heads of engineering and so on, who really do, and really have made my life a lot easier, because I've taken the time to build those relationships, understand where they're coming from, they understand where I'm coming from. We develop those alignments in terms of the way we think and our strategies, and all that kind of stuff. And it may feel like it's a hard task to start with, but it's really, really time well spent. Tip number 3. So landing into a new role, there may be, you may put heavy expectations on your shoulders, but there may also be heavy expectations put on your shoulders from other people, now that you're in a leadership position. And some of that will be around vision and defining strategy and stuff like that. And it may be, again, strategy and vision will be at different levels. So if you're leading a team, thinking about the strategy within the team. If you're leading, multiple teams, again, much wider. And if you're in a head of role like I am, you've got to think holistically across an entire spectrum of, tech and, and product, etc. And the biggest tip here for me is, don't try and do it on your own. I've learned this the hard way over the years. Sort of locking yourself away in a dark room, or sitting at your desk, tapping away, writing a strategy that you think everybody's going to love and everybody's going to understand, etc., etc., only to kind of then when you present it as almost like a big hurrah moment, to be kind of shocked that people maybe don't get on board as quickly as potentially they could. So what I've learned over time is, you need to do this in a much more collaborative way. You need to do this with your peers. You need to do this with, members of the wider quality community, as for example. And to do that, you need to do it in a way that creates a voice for everybody. So I'm not saying that you have to bring everybody into a room, that could be like hundreds of people, I don't know. But what you do need to do is, you need to create different ways for people to be able to contribute what it is that they are wanting to share. So you can do this in a number of different ways. You can set up workshops, you can do polls, you can have sort of empathy interviews. There's a number of different things that you can do to try and provide a voice for people. We want to be as inclusive as possible. But inclusivity doesn't mean that you have to literally go around to every single person and ask them their view. For me, my experience is more about creating the environment, creating the forums, creating the psychological safety for people to feel comfortable to share their thoughts, to share their experiences, to want to contribute. You can set up working groups, for example, and I've done this over recent weeks, months, years, where you lay a very sort of a skeleton of what the vision might look like, and you have to come up with something. And then you start building that out with multiple different people across multiple different disciplines, right? Bearing in mind, this is a quality strategy, quality vision. So it's not just the quality community that needs to define it, right? We can't expect people across all our teams, across all our disciplines to take ownership of quality if they're not part of actually defining what the vision and strategy is. And I found that this works really, really well. And obviously, different people be able to contribute in different ways. And they'll feel more comfortable maybe, using a lucid, putting some post-its on a lucid board. They might feel comfortable, sharing their thoughts verbally in a workshop, or they might just want to drop you a Slack message or an email to say, here are my thoughts. But everything is done collaboratively. And yes, it may take a little bit more time, but the difference being is that you're investing the time earlier to try and land the vision and land the strategy in a much more engaged and connected way with everyone. You'll always get people that will not want to contribute, or they don't take the opportunity. And then, when the vision or the strategy drops, they may be the ones that are saying, oh, this will never work, etc., etc. And that's fine. The key thing here is that you've given them the opportunity. You gave them, a voice. Whether they choose to use that voice is entirely up to them. So think about that. That for me is a really big a big point there, that you need to be mindful of going into a new leadership role, regardless of the level of the vision or the strategy you're trying to create. You want to make sure that you're doing it in a collaborative way, because ultimately the people that you're collaborating with will be the people that you need to get on board, and they're the ones that are going to be ultimately helping you implement that strategy longer term and making it successful or not. So be very, very mindful, very, very mindful of that. Tip number 4, and this does go again, kind of connects to what I was saying a moment ago, going around, obviously collaborating with people from a strategic perspective. But one thing I've learned over my years of leadership and driving strategy and driving transformation and all that kind of stuff is one of the only things that really matters, and to be very mindful of, should I say, is that everything starts and ends with people. People, are your catalyst. People are your biggest investment you should make. Yes, you can invest in tools. Yes, you can take time to shore up your processes and make your processes better. Yes, there's the whole cultural piece and etc., etc. And there was an old saying that stuck with me from early on in my leadership career, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that used to sort of really play on my mind. And over recent years, I'd even question that is true, because without people, culture doesn't exist, and neither does strategy. People are what make everything happen. So you need to really take time and invest in people, whether you're directly line managing people or not. You need to take time to invest in them. And that can be, like I've said before, to build those relationships. But a lot of that is very much about getting to understand what are their challenges, what do they need, what investment do they need from a learning and development perspective. You listen to their ideas, listen to the things that maybe aren't so good for them, and think about how you can help them. Building your team's skills and maturing their mindset and stuff like that, is so powerful. And you want to create an environment where everybody feels psychologically safe, as I mentioned before, and you do that by really showing that you care for people, and investing your time in people. If you do that, and if you come back to tip 3, where we're talking about working collaboratively with people on the vision and the strategy, and you're taking the time to invest in people so that they've got the right skills to help deliver that strategy, which they've contributed to, then things start taking really great shape. And that culture that you really want to drive and build, from a quality perspective, starts becoming a bit easier. It starts becoming something that more and more people organically create. And the thing with the people side of things is that people are very, very complex. People are very, very unique. No one individual is the same. So it's not binary. People aren't binary. I always say that technology is actually more simple than trying to figure people out. So you really need to invest that time. You really need to understand, what makes your people tick, what excites them, what really energizes them, how people work together. How do teams supplement the skill sets? What are the gaps that they have? We talk about having, this whole concept of unicorn people, but you don't need unicorn people. You need teams that can do all the things that you need to do to be successful, to deliver the strategy and the vision and all that great stuff, right? So understanding how people mold with people, how do they supplement each other, and then you can determine, okay, what skills do they need, and then you can start looking at processes and tools and all that sort of thing. But everything starts and ends with people. Whether you're line managing or not, you are a leader. You lead people. You will be leading people. You will be influencing people. So you really need to invest that time and that energy, and get comfortable, with being uncomfortable in those situations, because it can be hard. As I said, not every one individual is the same. You'll have a more natural connections with some people than others. Some people can be really difficult to get to open up. And as I mentioned earlier about trust, you have to earn trust. You have to earn respect as a leader. Just because you're in a leadership role doesn't mean people will automatically trust you and respect you. But how I operate as a leader is the other way around. Is I trust everybody and I respect everybody unless people give me a reason not to. But you can't expect that back as a leader, right? Leadership is a position of privilege, and it shouldn't be abused in any way, shape, or form. So, investing time with people, and making sure that they are your priority as a leader, and earning their trust, earning their respect. Everything else then comes off the back of that. The final tip for me is, I just mentioned there about investing in people, and caring for people, and looking after them and making sure they're okay, and from a well-being perspective, etc., etc. But the biggest learning that I've made over the years, and this isn't just for new people to leadership, this is also for people that have been in leadership for many, many years, but this is something to be very mindful of when you're stepping into leadership, because it can get out of hand very, very quickly, because, as I say, you've put a lot of expectation on your shoulders, and other people may put expectation on your shoulders as well, and that builds up with pressure. And my final tip is caring for yourself and making sure that you are okay, and investing in your own self-care. And that's really hard. Me and Chris have talked about this on the pod before, and next week we're going to be not next week, on the 23rd of July, we're going to be at the National Software Testing Conference, where we're going to be giving a talk specifically on this, around self-care in leadership, because we don't do it very well. We get so invested in everything else around us. We get so invested in making sure our people are okay, which I've just said, that's where you do need to invest the time. But the top tip is you need to invest the time in yourself to make sure you're okay, and you find that balance, because if you're not okay, you're not going to be able to invest your time and your energy into anybody else, and you won't be able to have the positive impact that you want, and that's really important. So you need to be comfortable with practicing different self-care techniques, taking time for yourself, reflect, check in with yourself, reach out to others. If you've had a really bad day, or things are becoming quite stressful, if it's a new role, or even if it's you've been in the role for a number of years, it doesn't matter. Take time to reach out to others and offload some of maybe that stress that you have. If you ever want to chat to me, reach out. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to sit, listen, and just converse with people, regardless of what the topic is. I'm always happy to chat. But that would be my top tip, and I can't underestimate how much that has changed me as a leader, thinking about that. Am I great at it? No, probably not still, but I'm trying. I'm practicing it. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to be more vulnerable. I'm trying to be more transparent, open up more with friends, colleagues, family. And, I'm starting to learn more about myself in terms of what my triggers are, what are the things that maybe I need to practice more, or I need to get better at. And even if I know what my triggers are, it's not necessarily what triggers me, but it's my response to those triggers, and how can I improve those responses, for example. So regardless of whether you're new to leadership or not, this would be my top tip for anybody in leadership. Take that time, understand yourself, take time to reflect, journal, just breathe, take time to breathe. It's okay, to take time out. It's okay if you need a rest. It's okay if you need to have a cry. I've had many a cry over the years. The difference is now I will cry in front of people, whereas before maybe I would have cried on my own in a room and not let anybody else know how I was feeling. And trust me, that's not a good way of dealing with any sort of stress or pressure or anything. There's many people out there that will be going through the same thing as you, and this is where communities are really great, and you can reach out to those communities and speak to other people in similar situations. As I say, I'm always around if you ever need to chat. I'm always around for just any advice, or even any general conversations around anything. And if I can help, I will help. If I can't help, I will just listen. And sometimes that's all we need, is somebody to just sit back and take the time to listen to what we have to say. They always say, like, a problem shared is a problem halved. and genuinely it can make a massive difference. So that would be my top tip. And if you are new to leadership, there's a lot there. There's a lot of things that you will learn, and you'll learn them. Sometimes you'll learn them the hard way. Sometimes you'll learn them from listening to podcasts like this, or reading articles or blogs that other people have put out there. But hopefully these tips may help you land better in the role, or just give you something to think about. There's a lot more that I could share, but obviously, I'm not going to take that time now. We'll potentially cover that in a more in-depth episode when we maybe have a guest on to talk about their experiences. But I just thought this might be useful for people, and hopefully people out there will take some value away from this episode and what I've been sharing. So that's it. Told you it was going to be a short one. But as always, we want to make sure we're dropping content as often as we possibly can. Hopefully Chris will be on the mend very, very quickly. So let's all wish him a speedy recovery. So get well soon, Chris. And if you're at the National Software Testing Conference on the week after next, on the 22nd and 23rd of July, I think it is, great to see you there. Come up and say hi to me and Chris. We're always happy to talk. As I say, we can get a beer afterwards, or go for a meal, or whatever. Come and say hi. Thank you as always for everybody that likes, subscribes, shares our content. The numbers are gradually creeping up. If you are one of those people that watches on YouTube but you aren't subscribed, please do subscribe, because it will make a massive difference to everything that we're doing. And we genuinely do appreciate all the support and can't thank everybody enough. So that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you take some value away from it. And take care of yourselves. I'll see you again on another episode of Quality Talks podcast.